Concept-based inquiry in social studies and humanities. A grade 8 history teacher walks to a blank wall at the front of her room. She's holding 3 sticky notes. On the first sticky note, she has written American Revolution 1776. On the second, French Revolution 1789. On the third, Arab Spring 2010 to 2012. She presses each one onto the wall, 235 years apart. 3 different continents, 3 different centuries, different clothes, different technology, different languages. She steps back. She turns to the class. These 3 things look very different. They happened in different centuries on different continents. They had different leaders, different flags, different weapons, different songs, but historians classify all 3 as revolutions. We are going to find the structure they share. That is the move. That is the entire frame for the lesson. The class will spend the next 90 minutes comparing across 3 cases, looking for the pattern that links them, articulating the rule, and then testing that rule against a 4th case they have never studied. This is concept-based inquiry in social studies. Thematic, not chronological. Concepts travel. Empire, revolution, migration, power, identity, sovereignty, memory. These concepts move across centuries and continents. The case study is the vehicle. The concept is the cargo. The cargo is what stays after the case study is forgotten. The history trap. Let me describe what almost certainly happened in your history education. The class did the French Revolution, chronologically. From the financial crisis of the 1770s to Napoleon, the teacher gave you the dates. The 14th of July, 1789, the tennis court oath, the reign of terror, the execution of Louis XVI in 1793. You memorized the dates. You wrote essays about the causes of the revolution. You passed the test. Then the class did the next thing, industrialization, or World War I, or the Russian Revolution. You memorized more dates, more names, more events. A year later, you watched footage on the news of a crowd filling a square in a country far from yours. People shouting, flags, anger, a young man on a podium with a microphone. Did you recognize what you were looking at? If your history education was the standard kind, the answer is probably no. You looked at the scene and you saw a foreign country in a different decade with different clothes and different flags. You did not see in those people the same human ingredients that filled the Bastille in 1789. Inequality, anger, a government that has lost legitimacy, organized opposition, a triggering event, a wave of mass action. You learned the French Revolution. You did not learn revolution. That is the history trap. Chronology first, meaning later. Students memorize dates and never grasp causation. They do units without ever building a concept that travels. And the cost is steep. We produce students who can recite the storming of the Bastille, but cannot recognize an uprising forming in their own century. We produce students who have done the Roman Empire, but cannot recognize the logic of imperial overreach in the present. We produce students who have studied colonization as a chapter and cannot see the legacy of colonization in the world around them. Concept-based inquiry in history says, the case study is not the point. The concept is the point. We use the French Revolution to understand revolution. We use Rome to understand empire. We use the Great Migration to understand migration. The case is the vehicle. The concept is the work, the move. Here is the move. Pick a concept. Pick 3 or 4 cases that look very different on the surface, but are instances of that concept. Compare across them on the same dimensions. Let the children articulate the pattern. Then test the pattern against a brand new case. Revolution, migration, empire, power, conflict, identity, sovereignty, memory. Each of these is a concept that travels. Each of these has multiple historical instances that can be compared. Each of these will help the children make sense of news they read tomorrow. The sequence is the same as in literature. Examine, articulate, transfer. The difference is that in history, the texts are events, or sources, or eras, or movements. The cases are pulled from across time and place. The work is the comparison. I'm going to walk you through 4 worked examples. Sources and perspective in grade 7, revolutions in grade 8, migration in grade 4 to 7, and memory and history in grade 9 to 10. Then I will say a word about geography, economics, and the diploma years. Worked example 1. Sources and perspective in grade 7. The teacher puts 2 short passages on the board. They describe the same event, the same night, the same street, the 5th of March, 1770. The street is in Boston. The event is what will come to be called the Boston Massacre. The first passage. The mob pressed in upon the soldiers, striking their muskets with clubs and daring them to fire. Fearing for their lives, the men discharged their weapons in the confusion. The second passage. The soldiers, without provocation, fired upon a peaceful gathering of citizens. 5 inhabitants of Boston lay murdered in the street, victims of military tyranny. She does not say who wrote which one. She asks the class, both passages describe the exact same event, on the exact same night, on the exact same street. One was written by someone who was there, so was the other. Read both. With your partner, decide who wrote the first one, who wrote the second, what in the words gives them away. The children read, they underline, they argue. Within 4 minutes, they are arguing about evidence. They have not been told the names of the authors, but they are reading the words. Then the teacher does the concept formation move. She lists 6 phrases on the board. Without provocation. The mob. Murdered in the street. Fearing for their lives. Military tyranny. In the confusion. She puts these in a yes column. Then she lists 6 other phrases. On King Street. 5 inhabitants of Boston. Muskets were fired. The night of the 5th of March. Soldiers of His Majesty's 29th. Snow lay on the ground. She puts these in a no column. She asks, what do the yes phrases have in common that the no phrases do not? The children figure it out. The yes phrases carry a feeling, a judgment, a choice of side. The no phrases are mostly descriptive. They could be written by anyone. She names what they have discovered. Loaded language, framing, omission, together, perspective. Then they investigate. She hands them 6 more sources about the same event. Captain Preston's deposition, Paul Revere's engraving, the testimony of Andrew, an enslaved man who saw the event, a London newspaper, a Boston town meeting resolution, John Adams's defense argument at the soldiers' trial. The names are hidden on the back of the cards. The groups sort the sources onto a perspective spectrum, sympathetic to colonists, neutral, sympathetic to the crown. For each placement, they justify with 1 word from the source. The discovery comes when they flip the cards. The Andrew source is on the colonist side, but he was an enslaved man whose perspective on what tyranny meant might differ in surprising ways. The John Adams source is more nuanced than expected. He defended the soldiers despite being a patriot. These surprises break the easy pattern of British equals pro-soldier, Bostonian equals anti-soldier. They force the children into a more nuanced reading. The transfer task. 2 real news articles about the same recent protest. From 2 different outlets. One from a left-leaning paper, one from a right-leaning paper. Same date, same crowd, very different framing. The task? You are a historian in 2075 writing about this protest. You have only these 2 articles. What can you say with confidence? What would you need to find out? What is each article leaving out? The strong responses use the language of corroboration, omission, and perspective. The students say what both sources agree on. They name what each source is leaving out. They identify what they would need to confirm the rest. That is the work. The children have built with their own minds the way historians actually work. Sources have perspective. Perspective is not the same as lying. Historians build defensible accounts by corroborating across sources, reading what each source includes, omits, and emphasizes. The pitfall here: do not name the concept perspective before the sort. If students see the label, they stop reading the words and start labeling sources. Let the concept emerge from the language. Worked example 2. Revolutions in grade 8. Now back to the teacher with the 3 sticky notes on the wall. She lets the class look at the wall for a moment. Then she puts 3 images on the projector. 3 paintings or photographs side by side. The Declaration of Independence being signed. The storming of the Bastille. Tahrir Square packed with protesters in February 2011. She asks, these 3 moments happened 235 years apart on 3 continents. The clothes are different, the technology is different, the languages are different, but they are all classified by historians as revolutions. Write down 3 things, only 3 that they share. The children pair up, their lists come back, large crowds, symbols and flags, demand for change, opposition to existing rulers. Now she sets up the concept attainment. 3 yes cases, 3 no cases. Yes, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution. No, the UK general election, the Black Death, India's independence. She lets them argue about the India case. It is deliberately controversial. Some students say it is a revolution, some say it is not. The arguing is the lesson. She asks, what do all 3 yes cases have that the no cases don't? The candidate rules come up. Lots of people are angry. No, that does not work. The Black Death produced lots of anger, but no revolution. The leader is killed. No, that is not always true. A different kind of system replaces the old one. That last one is the gold. She catches it and lifts it up. She names the 4 moving parts: legitimacy lost, organized opposition, triggering event, replacement order. These 4 become the column headers of the comparison chart that is coming. Now the children divide into 3 expert groups. 1 per case, each gets a 1-page dossier, a 4-sentence summary, 1 primary source excerpt, 1 image, a by-the-numbers panel with key dates, populations, and casualty figures. Each group fills an expert sheet with 4 boxes. Trigger: what specific event began the active phase? Ideology: what core idea were the revolutionaries fighting for, not just against? Leadership and mobilization: who organized people and how? Outcome: what replaced the old order? Did it last? Did the revolution achieve what it set out to do? After 15 minutes, the group's jigsaw regrouped, so each new group of 3 has 1 expert from each case. Each expert teaches their case in 3 minutes. Then the cross-case chart goes up on the wall. 5 rows. Trigger: ideology, leadership, outcome. And crucially, did it deliver what it promised? The Arab Spring row tells the strongest story. Tunisia, where one new order mostly held. Egypt, where the military returned. Libya, where the state collapsed. Syria, where civil war consumed everything. The same trigger family, wildly different outcomes. This is the intellectual climax of the lesson. Outcomes depend on what is built, not on what is overthrown. The teacher writes the generalization with the class. Revolutions occur when an existing order loses legitimacy, opposition gains organization, and a triggering event mobilizes mass action. Outcomes depend on what replaces the old order, not merely on what was overthrown. The transfer task: a hypothetical briefing. Atlantic country X. The same family has ruled for 41 years. Inflation hit 78% last year. Unemployment among under 30s is 44%. 3 weeks ago, security forces shot a 22-year-old fruit seller who was protesting a market tax. Video reached 14 million people on social media in 3 days. A coalition of trade unions, students, and exiled opposition politicians has called for a national strike. The president has said any protester will be crushed. The task? Using your generalization, predict. Is this country tipping into revolution? What would tell you yes? What would tell you no? If it does tip, what will determine whether the revolution succeeds? The strong responses identify all three preconditions: legitimacy lost, organization forming, trigger event credible enough to mobilize mass action. Then the deeper move. Whether it succeeds depends on what comes next. If the opposition coalition is planning a replacement order, the revolution may produce stable change. If they have no shared post-regime vision, the country may end up like Libya. Collapse, not like Tunisia. The pitfall in this lesson. Do not let one case dominate the airtime. If you spend 20 minutes on the French Revolution and 5 on the Arab Spring, students will treat the latter as a footnote and the pattern will not form. Keep dossier sizes equal and timings even. Worked example 3. Migration in grade 4 to 7. Let me move to a different grade and different concept. A grade for classroom, or 5, or 6, or 7. The teacher projects a single photograph. A family standing in a doorway, suitcases at their feet, looking back at their empty house. Below the photograph, a question. Why would a family leave a place they love? She says, imagine you had to leave your home tomorrow, forever. What would make you go? Talk to your partner for 1 minute. Be honest. The pairs talk, they share, the words come up. War, hunger, danger, jobs, family, better school, freedom. Then she shows 2 lists on the board. 3 yes cases of migration driven by hardship. A village leaves because there is no water. A family flees because of war. A person leaves because they cannot find work. 3 no cases of migration drawn by something better. A family moves for a great new school. A teenager moves to a city for its music scene. A scientist moves for a research lab. She asks, all 6 are migration. But the yes side and the no side describe 2 different types of reason. Can you name the 2 types in your own words? The children figure it out. Push and pull. What drives you away? What calls you forward? She names the discovery. Push factors. Pull factors. Then she adds, most real migrations have both. Now 3 case studies. Ireland in 1847. The potato famine, 2 million emigrated. Syria in 2015. War destroyed cities. Families walked hundreds of kilometers. Your school's own local family. A family who recently moved to your country. Anonymized if needed. The children rotate. They put push factors on red sticky notes. Pull factors on green sticky notes. They stick them onto the case poster. Then the cross case chart. Top 3 push factors. Top 3 pull factors. And one column the children will not have expected. What was the cost of leaving? The cost column matters. It surfaces what often goes unmentioned. Family separated. Dangerous voyage. Prejudice on arrival. Lost home. Lost friends. Sometimes lost family. The generalization. People move when the costs of staying outweigh the costs of leaving. Migration is driven by what pushes them away and what pulls them forward, and almost always carries a cost of loss. The transfer task. Birds. Every autumn, millions of birds leave the cold north of Europe and fly south to Africa. They fly thousands of kilometers. Many do not survive. Why do they do it? Use the words push and pull in your answer. The strong responses make the connection. In autumn, the cold and lack of food in Europe push the birds south. The warm weather and plenty of insects in Africa pull them there. Many birds die during the journey. That is the cost of leaving, but the cost of staying through winter would be even higher. So the birds migrate just like people when the cost of staying gets too high. That is the transfer. The concept of migration has just traveled out of human history into bird biology. The principle is portable. The pitfall here, and it is a sensitive one, Be careful in your class. Some students may have migrated, maybe refugees, may have family who did. Never single anyone out. Let them volunteer. The lesson is about empathy for all migrants, including the ones in your room. Worked example 4. Memory and history in grade 9 and 10. Now move up to a grade 9 or 10 classroom. The teacher has 3 short passages on the board. They are textbook excerpts. All 3 describe the same chapter of colonial history, the same century, the same company, the same place. But they were written in different decades. The first excerpt. The company brought stability, modern law, and railways to a fragmented subcontinent. Native rulers were given pensions in exchange for territories whose administration they were ill equipped to manage. Trade flourished under disciplined oversight. The second. The East India Company expanded its territories through a combination of treaties, military force, and political maneuver. While it built infrastructure such as railways and a legal system, it did so primarily to extract revenue. Famines occurred in regions where land taxes were heavy. The third. Through conquest and coercion, the East India Company seized control of large parts of South Asia. Its rule reorganized the economy to serve British markets, dismantled local industries, and presided over famines that killed millions. The railways and laws it introduced were instruments of administration and extraction, not gifts. The teacher does not name the dates yet. She says all 3 passages describe the same century, the same company, the same place. Read all 3 carefully. With your partner, list one word or phrase from each that you think no longer appears in the next one. What has been replaced and with what? The children read and compare. They produce sticky notes. Brought stability replaced with expanded through military force, replaced with seized control through conquest. Native rulers replaced with sovereign rulers. Gift replaced with instrument. She does the concept attainment move. Yes, these moves change the historical narrative. Replacing brought stability with expanded through military force. Adding a sentence about famine deaths. Naming individual Indian leaders, soldiers, or rebels. Reframing gifts as instruments, including women, enslaved peoples, or peasants as actors. No, these moves are just style. Using company versus East India Company. Using a longer sentence. Adding a date, spelling colonization with an S or a Z. She asks, what do all 6 yes moves change? What do the 6 no moves not change? The children build the rule. The yes moves change. Who has agency, who is named, what is included, and how actions are framed. The teacher names this. Historiographical change, 4 heads, vocabulary, agency, inclusion, framing. Now she reveals the dates. The first excerpt, 1955, a British textbook. Late Empire frame. The second, 1985, an Indian textbook. Post-independence consolidation frame. The third, 2020, an international curriculum. Post-colonial scholarship frame. The discovery hits hard. The textbook of a society tells us as much about that society as about the events it describes. In 1955, Britain needed the empire to have been benevolent. In 1985, India needed a clear-eyed account of injury. In 2020, the international curriculum needed to center colonized voices. History is rewritten as societies change, which voices they value. Collective memory selects what is remembered, who is named, what is reframed, and what is allowed to fall silent. The transfer task, a national holiday, a local monument, the school's own history. Find a description from 20 years ago and a description from today. What were the 4 moves? What does the change tell you about the society doing the writing? The strong responses identify all 4 shifts: vocabulary, agency, inclusion, framing, and then the move that matters most. What does the change in the page tell us about the society that wrote it? The pitfall. Do not moralize about wrong versions. The 1955 version is not the bad one. Treat each as a window onto the society that wrote it. The whole power of the lesson collapses if students leave with, "We used to be wrong, now we're right." The point is that the rewrite is ongoing. A word about geography and economics. The same approach works across the humanities. Let me give you two quick examples. In geography, take the concept of transboundary resources. A grade 9 teacher anchors the lesson with a map of the Nile Basin. 11 countries share one river. 86% of the water originates in Ethiopia. 85% is used by Egypt and Sudan downstream. She asks, what in this map predicts conflict? The class compares the Nile to other shared resources: the Rhine, the Great Lakes, the Tigris-Euphrates, the South China Sea. They build a three-dimensional sort: number of borders crossed, demand to supply ratio, existence of a binding institution. The pattern that emerges is not a values pattern. It is a structural pattern where demand outpaces supply, multiple sovereigns share the resource, and no binding institution mediates. The probability of conflict rises sharply. Where a binding institution exists, even with high tension, conflict de-escalates. Then the transfer, the Mekong. China has built 11 dams on the upper Mekong. The Mekong River Commission excludes China. 60 million people downstream depend on the river. Using the generalization, predict. The children think like geographers and political economists, not like moralists. The concept of transboundary institutional management has traveled. In economics, take the concept of opportunity cost. A grade 9 teacher gives each student $20 of fake currency and a wish list of 6 desirable things priced so no one can afford everything. Headphones at $14. A concert ticket at $12. A game at $10. Lunch with 3 friends at $8. A book at $7. A donation to a cause at $6. The total available is $57. They have 20. The children choose. They feel the trade-off in their bodies. The teacher asks, what is the one thing you most wanted but did not buy? Why didn't you buy it? From that simple moment, the concept of opportunity cost emerges. Every choice has a hidden cost equal to the value of the next best alternative given up. The principle extends to time, to attention, to public spending. The transfer is to a real government budget, a $4 billion defense increase. What was given up to make room for it? In every social studies subject, the move is the same. Find the concept. Use the case to teach the concept. Apply the concept to a new case. The case is the vehicle. The concept is the cargo. A word about the diploma years. At the diploma level, the same moves deepen. Let me give you 3 quick glimpses. In history, historiography becomes its own subject. The question, how do we know what we know, becomes central. Students compare not just sources, but historians. They notice that the same event has been interpreted differently by Marxist historians, post-colonial historians, structuralist historians, and so on. They learn that history is not a fixed past, but a renegotiated present. They learn that every account is provisional. In history, causation becomes multi-layered. The traditional approach asks what caused this conflict. The CBI approach distinguishes long-term causes, medium-term causes, short-term causes, and triggers. Then it asks which weight each layer carries. The structure of causation is a concept that travels across every conflict and every era. In economics and management, strategy under uncertainty becomes the move. The traditional approach teaches probability as a formula. The CBI approach poses a decision problem. You are the CEO. You have incomplete information. You must commit. 2 options. What would you do? Why? The children wrestle with decision making under uncertainty before any expected value calculation appears. The calculation comes at the end as a tool for sharpening intuition the children have already built. In every diploma subject, the principle is the same. The concept travels. The case study is the vehicle. The case study is forgotten. The concept stays. The hardest move. I want to name the hardest move in concept-based inquiry history. The one that most teachers, including very good teachers, find hardest to make. The hardest move is stopping at the topic. You finish the World War I unit. You feel productive. The children wrote essays. They know the dates. They can name the major battles. They can list the causes. The unit is done. You have done World War I. That is the trap. You have not done anything that travels. You have done a topic. You have not done a concept. The flip is this. Do not do World War I. Use World War I to explore industrial age conflict, the failure of diplomacy under nationalist mobilization, or the way alliance systems can amplify a local trigger into a global catastrophe. Each of those is a concept. World War I is the case. Same with the civil rights movement. Do not do the civil rights movement as a chapter in a textbook. Use the civil rights movement to explore how nonviolent collective action negotiates with state power. That concept travels into the Indian independence movement, into anti-apartheid South Africa, into contemporary protest movements. Same with the Industrial Revolution. Do not do the Industrial Revolution as an inventory of inventions. Use the Industrial Revolution to explore how technological transformation reshapes labor, family structure, urbanization, and inequality. That concept travels into every subsequent technological transition, into the digital revolution, into the AI transition that students are living through right now. The phrase is simple, not the topic, the concept underneath the topic. When you ask before you plan, what concept does this case study illuminate? You are doing concept-based inquiry. When you ask only what content do I need to cover, you are doing the traditional thing. The first question changes the whole year. The action you can take tomorrow. Here is the move. For your next history or social studies unit, do this single thing. Before you plan anything else, identify the thematic concept underneath the chronology. Not the topic, not World War I, not the civil rights movement, not industrialization, not the Roman Empire, not the French Revolution. Ask, what concept does this case study illuminate that would transfer to other cases? Write the concept at the top of your unit plan in 1 or 2 words. Conflict, revolution, empire, migration, power, memory, sovereignty, reform. Now plan the unit around that concept. Pick at least 2 other cases that instantiate the same concept. Not just your headline case, at least 2 more, so the children can compare, so the pattern can become visible. Plan one comparison chart that the children will fill across the cases. Plan one generalization the children will articulate by the end. Plan one transfer task that tests the principle against a case the children have not seen. The case can be hypothetical. The case can be drawn from current events. The case just has to be new. That is the move. Concept first, cases as vehicles. Generalization in the children's words. Transfer as the proof. If you do this for 1 unit a term, your students will start to see history differently. They will stop asking, why do we have to memorize this? They will start asking, what does this pattern explain in the world today? That is the work. A 60-second recap. We started with 3 sticky notes on a wall. The American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Arab Spring. From that single moment, an entire approach to teaching history became visible. Thematic, not chronological. Concept, not topic. The case study is the vehicle. The concept is the cargo. We saw the same move unfold across 4 examples. Sources and perspective in grade 7. Revolutions in grade 8. Migration in grade 4 to 7. Memory and history in grade 9 to 10. We touched on geography, where resource conflict is a structural rather than moral problem. And on economics, where every choice has a hidden cost. We saw how the principle deepens without changing at the diploma level. The single piece of advice I want to leave you with is this. Do not do the Roman Empire. Use Rome to explore how empires rise and fall. The empire is the case. The rise and fall is the work. In chapter 18, we end part 4, where the disciplines are mostly structure of process, the arts, design, physical education, and the early years, where every move we have discussed in this part takes a different form, with smaller bodies and simpler words. We will start with a grade 8 drama teacher who performs the same 4-line scene twice, once with the speaker as high status, once as low status, and watch what the class learns from a single tiny moment that they cannot put into words but cannot forget.